All right, let's catch a little MSDNC. See what the other side's saying tonight.
I'm worried that Trump is on the edge of creating a civil war. He alluded to it more than once. He alluded to the fact that if he did not get reelected, that there could be a civil war. What does Trump expect? Oh, I believe he expects violence. I believe he expects confrontation. I believe he's working toward a civil war. We're not going to get goaded.
I would like for you to die of measles, of polio, of all the horrible diseases that living in this country, in this bubble of privilege and ignorance and morbid stupidity, you have the luxury of not having to worry about it because it doesn't really affect you. I hope it affects you. I hope it affects your children and your grandchildren. I hope it guts your community. That will make my life meaningful and extremely happy.
Wow. Well, enough of that. Sounds to me like both of those ladies need a good deal of help. Anyway, back to fixing the country, and live from Times Square, it's that Kevin Show.
Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps.
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media.
Is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him as Nostradamus.
Of course that Kevin Show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald Show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin Show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Straight ahead, educating America, Jonathan Butcher, Dr. Robert Jeffress, and Patrice Onwuka. Sketch comedy from Al Curry, the Babylon Bee, and Not a Parody. The conservative young female answer to the manosphere, Emily Sturge, is here. An exclusive sit-down with Jesus Christ, Jonathan Roumie, and Torrin Wells in the spotlight. And now, from Times Square, the only man in America not famous enough to be invited to the Jeff Bezos wedding, even though he really wanted to go. From Times Square, here's Kevin!
I don't think you got that one right, Dave. I never have expressed an interest in going to the Jeff Bezos wedding. In fact, I was reading this week that it's going to be an all Hollywood kind of affair. And there's going to be, anybody who's everybody is going to be there because everybody wants to make nice with Jeff Bezos. I mean, he runs the Washington Post. He owns Amazon. He's, one of the most powerful guys on the planet. But you know who didn't get an invite? That guy. Do you know why he didn't get an invite? Because of that. I wouldn't have invited him either. Dude, put your tongue back in your mouth. It's not nice. Speaking of the opposite of that, that's lack of class. Speaking of classy, well, let me stay on lack of class for a second. Did you see what Maxine Waters, there she was in the opening, bad-mouthing the president, saying he wanted to start a civil war or something. I've never seen, by the way, Republicans do what I have seen that other lady in that video do. And there are thousands of videos of progressive females in particular. I don't know why, but progressive females losing their absolute shiz and just going off on people like that. And yet Maxine Waters says, no, Trump's the one that wants to have a civil war and kill all of his enemies and everything else. You haven't met some of these women, Maxine. And you know what? I don't think you've met Mrs. Trump either. This week, Maxine Waters called for the deportation of Melania Trump. And I don't think she intended to do this. I don't think she intended to bring attention to what she brought attention to, but she did it. But Maxine Waters, one of the crabbiest, flapjackiest, happy angry people I've ever seen. And I don't even know what that description contains. But yeah, just someone who just ugly all the time. That's Maxine Waters. Just being ugly, being nasty. Blah. But she's like, well, maybe we should just deport Melania Trump. Well, first of all, she's a citizen, so you can't. Secondly, she is the textbook perfect definition of how we want people to become citizens. She came here on a work visa, applied for citizenship while working, went through the entire process the way she is supposed to do so. And after she became a citizen, she then vouched for her parents to be able to come, and she walked them through the citizenship process, and they all became citizens. Melania's family became a citizen the legal, proper, moral way for people to become citizens. Not the way Maxine Waters wants them to become. She just wants everybody to just kind of walk over the border and then just say, okay, boom, now you're a citizen. But she was saying maybe we should deport the First Lady this week. Just one of the many silly things that I ended up having to correct in the pages of townhall.com. Are you reading townhall.com? You should be. I'm writing almost every day now. And the other big one that got a lot of attention this week that I wrote about was the group chat story. Now, a little bit later on, we've got some new sketch comedy from the Babylon Bee about the group chat. You don't want to miss this. It's really, really good. Oh, and we've got to sit down with Jesus, the man who plays Jesus, Jonathan Roumie, one-on-one, 60-minute style, he and I, and it is fun. It is beautiful. It is delightful. You're going to enjoy this sit-down. But that's because The Chosen is in theaters this weekend, and I'm taking the tribe to go see it. I hope that you will check it out as well. But the other thing that I wrote about that I wanted to bring up was the group chat. Everywhere I've seen the progressives, like in the video, losing their mind all over social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, they're just losing it everywhere. But when they do, they're all about how horrible it was that somehow a reporter was not only on the group chat, but then, told the details of the group chat, which technically the group chat information did not even qualify as classified information. Everybody was saying they broke classified protocol. It's considered highly sensitive, but not classified. And I might add that the only way that information could have been used to harm Americans was had something gone wrong with the attack. And by God's grace, our attack on the Houthis was textbook, totally successful, and indisputable in terms of how well we executed it. So good. The other thing I like about it is if you look at the text on the group chat, everybody is on the same page, and they are saying, does this comport with the commander-in-chief's wishes? Want to make sure that we're not going astride from something that the commander-in-chief wants. In other words, it shows that the entire, from Department of State to Department of Defense and everything in between, and those two departments are usually on different pages from each other, it shows that all of them are on the same page and pulling in the same direction. Wonderful thing to see that the top leadership is competent. They're focused. They are out to get our enemies. And you know what? I don't mind the world seeing that particular group chat. You know why? Because it strikes fear in our enemies, and it assures our allies that we are back, baby. We are all together. And then when you see after that group chat what happened to the Houthis, it's kind of like when Donald Trump was having dinner with Xi Jinping in his first administration, and he says, excuse me a second, I got to go do something. He goes and drops bombs on missiles on Syria because they had gassed their own people. Comes back and said, yeah, I had to clean up something, and then he tells them all about it. Xi Jinping's eyes, oh, wow. I want that. I want all of our enemies to be fearful of when a group chat's being formed, because we're going to discuss how to keep Iran in neutral. I want that to take place. I want them to have a natural sense of hesitation about doing something against America. because when they do, the world's a safer place. And the group chat basically shows that 1,000%. So I'm very, very excited that we have a competent team that is doing what they need to be doing. And I want to make sure that future bad guys take it just as seriously. Friends, stay with us. Huge show. Torrin Wells is back in the spotlight. Great sketch comedy. And Jonathan Roumie as Jesus on this show. You don't want to miss it. Stay here.
McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com, That Kevin Show on all social media, and thatkevinshow@gmail.com if you want to drop an good old-fashioned email. I used to think actually handwritten letters were old-fashioned. Now it's email. Anyway, it's a strange day we live in. But, maybe education had something to do with that. And speaking of education, that seems to be on the chopping block if the Trump administration has its way. Jonathan Butcher is part of the Heritage Foundation. He's a senior fellow there, and he joins us to discuss. Jonathan, my viewers and listeners have for a long time known that the Department of Education is a bureau of 4,300 bloated employees that don't really do anything to contribute to the learning of any of our kids. I'm much more interested in finding out not whether we should be getting rid of the Department of Education, but how quickly and what are the steps to making it happen. What's your assessment?
Well, what the president has done just in the past 2 weeks has been a huge step in that direction. So he has kept essential services, which should ease the minds of parents. So things like money for children in low-income areas, money for children with disabilities, even the student loan program, all of those are going to continue as they are statutorily required. Now, there has been a pretty significant reduction in force. It's called a RIF, moved about half of the employees to a pretty generous retirement package just in the last 10 days or so. So that was a big step. And now I think that there are some smaller programs that the agency can work on or that the secretary can work on closing. But the big thing now is as we see where the loan program is going to go, whether it's going to go to Treasury or whether it could be another administration. That's a big sum of money, and it is just not in the Constitution for Washington to be, the default lender for student loans. So that'll be the next big step.
Doesn't it make sense for Treasury just to assume that? I mean, they're good at setting up accounts and making sure that the ledgers are balanced. It would seem like that would just be the natural place for it to go.
Could be, though there are other offices, either independent of Washington or semi-independent, that handle these kinds of loans. So Treasury is a great alternative. There may be others. I think the good thing to know is that the president has said at least once, and the secretary has echoed it, that this will be a part of the dismantling of the agency, will be moving the loan program. And look, this is entirely appropriate. There was a time when private lenders had more of a stake and gave students more options, really, as they look to pay for higher ed. As Washington has become more involved, as taxpayers have been funding more and more student loans, tuition has gone up, right? This is the Bennett hypothesis from the late 1980s, that the more that taxpayers contribute to student loan programs, the more that tuition is going to go up, because colleges know that the taxpayer will foot the bill.
It's a money train. It's just keep sending the dollars in, of course. Okay, so I don't really think that there's much concern in terms of legitimacy for any of the things you just outlined. This was a hugely overfed bureaucratic block of people that, as I said at the beginning, the outset, didn't really contribute to the learning of the average student, didn't do much to improve reading scores or math scores across the country. This was an experiment in federalizing something that the founders never envisioned us federalizing. And I've always thought that, like most laws, education is best controlled when it's, closest to the student, closest to the consumer. Will there be a boost at the local level? Will these monies be being returned back to local communities? And will that improve, in your estimation, the future and the overall outcome for students?
Well, a significant sum is spent already per student. I mean, we're talking upwards of $16,000, almost $17,000 per child, of which Washington federal taxpayers make up about 10%. So it's a pretty comparatively modest sum, right? Most of the spending is coming from states and local taxpayers anyway. I think what we're going to see immediately, though, is that as we reduce the footprint, even if we don't get to the point of closing the agency tomorrow, even as we reduce the federal footprint, that will mean less in terms of regulations and rules, dear colleague letters that come from Washington telling schools what to do, coercing them to, adopt national standards as they tried to do back, only 10 or 12 years ago. It was only, about that long ago that the Obama administration tried to get schools to hold quotas for the kids who they suspended or expelled, regardless of how kids behaved. I mean, it was clearly an effort to say you may not suspend or expel Black or Hispanic students, regardless of what they do. And that took away teacher control of the classroom, right? How can a teacher maintain order if they have restrictions on how they can enforce the rules?
Yeah.
So I think by eliminating these kinds of regulations, that is going to free up states and local districts to then make decisions in the best interests of their unique kids.
Which is what should be happening. Parents in those districts should ultimately have the final say on how those schools are run. And that's why I would love to see lots and lots of parents run for school board. Don't leave it to some professional politician to serve on the school board. You serve on the school board. If you've got it, and when your kid's out, get out. Let another parent come in who's got skin in the game. But I think that's where you get ultimate accountability and ultimate progress, because you've got people that are in the driver's seat that are actually going, well, this is what our kids are dealing with, and this is where they need to get to by the end of their time. It's ironic what you brought up about the spending per student. I was just at the New Jersey summit this last week, and downstate in Atlantic City, the Republicans were meeting there, and they were hosting gubernatorial candidates, and they were talking about educational standards and how you have in, for instance, Atlantic or in some of the downstate school districts, you have spending that's $10,000 or $12,000 per student. In Newark, you have $37,000 spent per student, and the outcomes are completely opposite. Where the money goes is not where the results go. So where's all that money going? I mean, that's the lack of transparency in this entire process is maddening on one level. But then when you compare that with the actual outcomes of what they're getting for those dollars, it's insanity.
Well, sure. Now, remember, 80+% of a school's budget goes to salaries and benefits. So much of this is going to teacher salaries already. And in states like New Jersey, New York, California, the unions have such control over the contract process with teachers that they benefit from any lobbying that is done to raise teacher pay. Now, listen, effective teachers should be compensated appropriately. There's no question about that.
But make it merit, baby. Put it all on best performing teachers.
Well, and when unions make it virtually impossible to fire low-performing teachers, we set up a system where the students are the losers. And that's really what's happened. I mean, we've known that for years, right? Yeah. Unions make it virtually impossible to have teachers who are not effective let go.
Jonathan Butcher of the Heritage Foundation, appreciate your work. Thank you for giving us some insight on all of this. Best wishes.
Thank you.
Kevin McCullough coming back from Times Square. Don't change that dial.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next. That Kevin McCullough. From New York, that Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com, That Kevin Show on all social, thatkevinshow@gmail.com if you want to drop me a note. I always enjoy when friends stop by, and while we're breaking down the headlines and giving you kind of the perspective on what's going on, my next guest is someone who not only has strong opinions about that, but is also a very biblically centric, which is a very good word in very rough times, a teacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ, a preacher of the Word of God, and pastor of the First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. Dr. Robert Jeffress, it is great to see you again. Welcome back.
Great to see you, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
You were just with the president last week, and I know that when he was in office the first go around, he would somewhat frequently talk to you about different things. I don't want to know any of the confidences of any of that, but what was your kind of feeling as to how the president is feeling about his second term? He's been very busy. I don't think he's getting any sleep, but what was your takeaway?
Well, the context, Kevin, was about 15 of us were at the White House for a listening session where the administration listened to our concerns and what we would like to see accomplished in the faith area for the next 4 years. And it was very encouraging to hear what the president already had planned. And he knew we were there and invited us over from the executive office building over to the West Wing to visit with him in the Oval Office. And we just had a great visit together. He showed me the new bald cap he had. It was a red cap with the lettering. Everything Trump said was true. And, I said, what do you have to do to get one of those, Mr. President? And he gave me one, which was very gracious. But we talked about a few things, and then we had a time to pray. And I always think it's interesting that the president, with everything he has to do, would take 30 minutes out to spend with us and would have us pray. And I was asked to say a few words for the group before I led off in the prayer. And Kevin, I thank the president for two things on behalf of all of us. First of all, for the courage he has to push back against these leftist judges who are trying to prevent him from performing not just his constitutional mandate, but his biblical mandate to protect citizens from evildoers. Mm-hmm. And then I thanked him for what he's doing to make faith central in America again. You know, I pointed out that his predecessors, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, weren't just indifferent toward Christianity. They hated conservative Christianity and those who adhered to it. And I said, I think one of the great ironies of history is going to be that it took a secular real estate tycoon from New York City to put faith in its proper perspective in American life.
Well, you know this very well, Dr. Jeffress, because you've spent a lot of time here. In fact, when we met, we were both doing the strategy room with Harris Faulkner long before she was doing Outnumbered on the actual TV channel. But you know that the Christian community in New York, though it is not well known outside the city, it is numerous, 8,000 churches here and people that pray and seek God. And what's interesting about this last election with that tycoon that you were just talking about is that even in places like Manhattan, he got more votes, and there were more people of faith that came to his side in every county. He had an increase of votes in every county across the entire country, but even in places like secular Manhattan. So I'm hopeful that with what the country has been through, that there is a degree of, I don't know, revival might not be the right word, but that there's an awakening of sorts that kind of precedes a revival, that people are saying, I want to know more about why people believe this. One of the questions we're asking on my daily radio show here in New York is how do we live? How do we live in a culture where the culture hates God, detests his word, and is very suspicious of people like you and me that claim that that word is authoritative and that God is real. And it's been fun to have shepherds from the New York area join us and to kind of unpack some real basic biblical truths about that. One of the things that I always look forward to is that you're constantly writing. You're a voracious writer, and you've got a brand new book that is just out. We're going to take a break in just a second to pay some bills, but get into this Jesus Revealed in the End Times, your newest.
Well, last year, after Hamas invaded Israel, a lot of people were wondering, is this the end, the beginning of the end? And so I wrote very quickly a book that became very popular, Are We Living in the End Times? Mm-hmm. Instead of looking at the events of Bible prophecy, the rapture, the tribulation, the second coming, I look at how Jesus is revealed in the end times, because in the end, it's not about events. The end times are about the unveiling of a person.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back, Kevin McCullough. Glad to have you with us. It's Times Square, and in the days in which we live, and I was one of them that wondered after October 7th, is this significant in terms of a biblical context? Is there some sign that this is moving us towards what the Bible refers to as the end of times, the end of days? Dr. Robert Jeffress is back with us. He's just released the book, Jesus Revealed in the End Times, a novel take on how to look at this period of instruction and prophecy from the scriptural text, Dr. Jeffress. Why is it important that we see that Jesus is revealed in this section of Scripture?
Well, I think it's to, first of all, be filled with hope. Again, we don't have to dread what's coming. It's great news that Jesus is coming back to be judge, to be king, to be Lord. We didn't see that all in his first coming, but we're going to see it in his second coming. And that's something for every believer to rejoice about. And we ought to be filled with hope. I think it's a poor witness, Kevin, for Christians to go around scared and intimidated and huddled together and, oh, the end is approaching. We ought to welcome the end because of not what is coming, but who is coming. So we ought to be filled with hope, but we also ought to be filled with a desire for holiness. You know, the Bible never divorces the teaching of Bible prophecy from everyday living. In 2 Peter 3, the apostle, after describing how the present heaven and earth are going to be burned up and a new heaven and earth are coming, he says, what sort of people ought we to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the Lord? And so the revelation of Jesus Christ was not given to make us smarter sinners. It was to make us more obedient disciples of Christ. And I hope this book, Jesus Revealed in the End Times, will accomplish those two goals. It'll fill Christians with hope about the future, but also that desire for holiness today.
Well, let's talk about particularly that first part. In speaking with pastors, at least here in the New York area, since COVID, and in some ways more acutely since October 7th, but generally speaking, since COVID, there's a feeling amongst a lot of the pastoral community here that God is revealing more fruit in their ministry. There's more people coming to faith. There's more people naturally curious about what God's message through Jesus is all about. And they will regularly remark, this wasn't that way prior to that. And so they kind of sense that there's a season and that they're wanting to do that. They're wanting to take advantage of that season and make sure that they saturate it for the good of the gospel as much as they can. But in the broad sweep of that, there's also this kind of returning to like the basics. It was the Green Bay Packers coach that would say, "Gentlemen, this is a football," at the beginning of every season. In other words, getting back to the most basic of basics. And whether it's in the end times or in the most doctrinally confusing or sophisticated passages of Scripture, the gospel is still woven through all of it. And in that mechanism of trying to bring hope to people, it is in the good news that, first of all, I've been saved. I'm a sinner, and he loved me enough to do that, and that can apply to you as well. Talk to me about the basis of the gospel being the hope that people see in that Jesus that is revealed in the end times.
Well, what I'm seeing, Kevin, is we saw the Barna survey last week that said only 40% of Americans believe in the existence of God. That's an astounding number. Mm-hmm. Only 40%. Why is that? I think what has happened is it's not that atheism has increased that much. I think what has happened is people no longer feel they have to profess to believe something they really don't believe. We're losing cultural Christians, which I think is a good thing. There's not this group of people who think they have to play like they have to say they believe in God to be considered a good person. People are being more honest about what they believe. And I think it reveals that we're in a minority, which isn't all bad. I mean, the fact is the hope of Jesus Christ shines most brightly in the darkness. And I really believe, and this is a great mistake I see among Christians right now, they think because of this election, the golden age is coming, everything is right with the world, we can just sit back and wait for Jesus to return. No. And this is no time for Christians to let up. It's time to double down. I mean, Jesus said, work while it's day because the night comes when no man can work. I think, and I've said it often, I think this election was a respite. It's a pause. It gives us a little longer to share the gospel. But if we believe what the Bible says about the end times, things are not going to get better. They're going to get worse before they get better. But again, as Christians, we don't have to fear that because we know how this story ends, and it ends good for those who know Christ.
Yeah. We've talked a lot on the show in the How Do We Live segments about living in Babylon. And of course, Babylon is a term that is found in the book of Daniel. It's an actual geographical place. It was a real kingdom, Nebuchadnezzar, etc. But it also takes on this kind of character throughout the rest of Scripture to imply a municipality or a government or a nation state that is poised to oppose God and to hate God. Daniel and Revelation both deal with the end times in a significant way, and I kind of think that if I had been Daniel, I would have been tempted to give up at some point because what he saw was not good stuff. And in some ways, that not good stuff, the warning is, hey, you don't have to experience that. Trust Jesus, worship the true and living God, and you have a different outcome. But can you just touch on the similarities between America and Babylon?
Well, Babylon, like you said, was a real city, but it also represents a false religious system and a false commercial system. And it's the world that John said is at war with the things of God. And again, we're going to see a rise of Babylon. I believe it's going to result in the persecution of Christians eventually in our country. I think we're going to see that. But Babylon is ultimately destroyed, and that's the good news.
Dr. Robert Jeffress, the book is Jesus Revealed in the End Times. So glad to have you with us. Thank you for being here. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
You got it. Kevin McCullough coming back from Times Square. Don't go.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Donald, Teslas are being destroyed all over the country. You know I love the Tesla. It's an electric car for cool, straight, conservative guys, so I'll tell you what. Since they're attacking cool, straight guy stuff, I'll declare these people as gay terrorists. Mr. President, I just received reports that the people destroying the Teslas are screaming Allahu Akbar before the explosions. My God, they're yelling hallelujah, a gay bar? Elon, you have the entire United States military at your disposal. Oh my god, X is being cyber attacked again. Donald, I need to use your computer right now. What's your password? It's Crooked Hillary 47. Great, I'm in. I'm trying to find out where the attack's coming from. Dang it, they're masking their IP address. I'll have to consult X's most powerful employee. Charles, I need you to track down whoever's hacking into X. No problem, Elon. I will use my mind powers to locate them. Oh, that's it. Oh, I think I've got them. Wait. Logan, come help me rub my temples. Locating. Oh, there they are. Do you want me to teleport you to the location? That would be great, Charles. All right. Oh, it's happening. Oh, you're leaving soon. Oh. Where am I? Is this the anonymous headquarters?
Congratulations, Elon. You figured out that I'm behind the X attacks. I guess now I'm supposed to explain to you why. It's because you defunded his gay Mexican chicken fighting training camp in Afghanistan. Shut up, Maxine. You see, I was using the money delegated to my gay chicken fighting initiative to buy a yacht.
I suppose I understand. Now that I know you're behind this, will you stop?
No. Now, thanks to you, I have to pay for it without taxpayer dollars.
2, 3, Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him from Nostradamus.
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Still to come, during the Pay Gap with Patrice Onwuka. And what's the conservative young female answer to the manosphere? Emily Sturge has the answer. And this hour, Kevin sits with an exclusive one-on-one with Jesus, Jonathan Roumie. Plus, Torrin Wells back in the spotlight. And now, just to make sure we have enough room for the savior of the world, here's That Kevin and Assignment Desk Weekend.
For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough. Deadline DC, Elise Stefanik, Congresswoman from New York, has graciously decided to remain in Congress after President Trump has yanked her as UN consideration for ambassador. That's right, Elise went from being nearly the face of America on the international stage to now having to stay in the job that ranks just above the DMV in terms of approval ratings. But don't worry, she says she's a team player. And nothing screams teamwork like getting benched by a quarterback and clapping from the sidelines. Go MAGA! Meanwhile, in Florida, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the first arrest of a top MS-13 gang leader who, of course, joined the gang in middle school. Because when most of us were worrying about lunch money or algebra, this guy was learning how to extort people and run a murder ring. America's public schools, where we teach kids to read, write, and apparently run international crime syndicates. On to sports, sort of. It's opening week. Broadway actress and possible series prototype Michaela Diamond stunned fans at a Yankees game this week by reading the national anthem off her phone. Because nothing says love of country like Googling, "Oh, say can you see" somewhere mid-performance. We've come a long way from Whitney Houston, remember her rendition, bringing the house down at the Super Bowl, to now watching someone swipe through Genius.com, butchering the Star-Spangled Banner like it's open mic night at woke Starbucks. Up in Boston, a Russian scientist working at Harvard Medical School was detained by ICE this week, not because she was Russian, but because, get this, she was smuggling frog parts. That's right, frog parts. Apparently, the cutting-edge science at Harvard now involves dissecting Kermit and FedExing him internationally. It's unclear if she was building a mutant frog army or just launching the first Eastern Bloc frog-themed Cirque du Soleil. But one thing's for certain. If you're flying into Boston with a duffel bag full of amphibian leftovers, TSA is there, and they will take notice. Then on Capitol Hill, lawmakers were stunned as Tesla robots made a visit. That's right, actual robots. They showed up just in time for anti-Doge protesters to scream at Elon Musk's dealerships. And in 2025, it's not weird anymore if protesters are mad at you or crypto or Elon. Elon is selling cars on Mars, and humanoid bots are now standing in the hallways of Congress and somehow still showing more intelligence than even half the subcommittees that meet there. And finally, in Hollywood, a real-life crisis meets sci-fi. Suzanne Summers' husband has reportedly created an AI version of his late wife from her days on Three's Company. Because nothing honors your beloved spouse quite like turning her into a chatbot in go-go boots. Somewhere Alexa is already filing a restraining order. For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough.
Hi, I'm Dirk Wiggins, a journalist for The Atlantic. Recently, I was added to group text messages on Signal, in which the Trump administration was making secret war plans. At first, I was really excited because I've never been invited to be part of a group chat before. But it turns out that they added me by mistake. But the important thing is that I get to reveal to you all of the shocking text messages from the Trump administration. Let's take a look. JD Vance, let's proceed with caution. While I acknowledge our responsibility to protect shipping lanes, I don't want America to continue to police the world. Pete Hegseth, bombs away, suckers. Bomb emoji, bomb emoji, bomb emoji. JD Vance, haha, classic Pete. JD Vance, wait, you didn't actually bomb anyone, did you? Pete Hegseth, grimace emoji, bomb emoji, explosion emoji, eagle emoji, eagle emoji, eagle emoji. Pete Hegseth, I love you guys. Michael Waltz, love you too, brother, no homo. Winky emoji. Steve Witkoff, heart hands emoji. Donald Trump, unsubscribe. Donald Trump, Canada. John Ratcliffe, what? Donald Trump, is this attack chat room, Canada? John Ratcliffe, you want us to bomb Canada? Donald Trump, Greenland, Mexico. Donald Trump, California? Pete Hegseth, sorry guys, missed this, had a few too many, LOL, drunk face emoji. Pete Hegseth, but yeah, let's bomb Canada. Marco Rubio, great job on the attacks, y'all. Proud of you guys. High five emoji, 100 emoji, dancing woman emoji, painting nails emoji. Pete Hegseth, thanks Marky, hug emoji. Marco Rubio, hugging you right back, bro. Pete Hegseth, my heart is full right now. Smile emoji. Marco Rubio, heart eyes emoji. JD Vance, you know you guys can start your own chat. LOL. Donald Trump, how do you get Warp Whistle World 1? Donald Trump, how do you get Warp Whistle World 1 Reddit? Donald Trump, sorry, thought this was Google, LOL. Michael Waltz, LOL. JD Vance, crouch on the white block, then run to end of level. Thumbs up emoji. Pete Hegseth, picture of stein full of beer. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, gents. John Ratcliffe, cheers. Steve Witkoff, bro, it's 9 in the morning, LOL. Pete Hegseth, what of we bombed Puerto Rico, LOL. Pete Hegseth, if. John Ratcliffe, dude. Pete Hegseth, haha, I was just kidding. Unless you guys are into it. LOL. Donald Trump, unsubscribe. Marco Rubio did 200 on the bench press this morning. Smile emoji, flex emoji. John Ratcliffe, nice, get it, flex emoji. Tim Waltz, let's get some pics of those biceps. Smile emoji. Pete Hegseth, wait, who added Tim Waltz, LOL? Tim Waltz has left the chat. Both terrifying and horrifying. Now, I'm still in the group chat, so if you want to know more about the Trump administration, keep reading The Atlantic and keep tuning in and keep being my friend. And I'll let you know what they say.
Listen carefully, because I'm going to tell you what is about to happen.
This is my Father's word. Oh, let me never forget that though the wrong seems off so strong, God is the ruler, yeah.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin. Now, back to That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com, That Kevin Show at every social media outlet, and thatkevinshow@gmail.com if you want to drop me a note. I'm always interested in hearing what you have to say. Glad to do so. I'm also very interested in knowing, can we solve the big problems of our day? And for the last number of years, there's always this, pearl-clutching reporting that comes out of Washington and New York saying, oh, look at the pay gap. The pay gap is so bad. It's terrible. Women are getting ripped off in the pay gap. Are they? I'm not sure. I keep having people on every year that explain some of the finer details of this to me. And under nuance, I'm not exactly convinced that there is. But I know someone who does. Patrice Onwuka will tell us the truth. She's with the Independent Women's Forum, and I've come to trust her reliably on economic issues. Patrice, every year it's the same thing. Women are being paid less. They're being paid less. They're being paid less. I look at some of the numbers, and if the woman has been in the job the same length of time the man has, and has roughly the same experience and has roughly the same level of success, it's been harder for me to spot a big pay gap, but am I just looking in the wrong place?
Well, you might be. Here's what people are hearing about. They're hearing that women make about 84 cents on the dollar that men make, but that is averages. Average men and average women. We all know, though, we are not average people, and we make very specific choices that impact our unique families and our unique circumstances. When you control for a lot of these different factors, the pay gap all but disappears. And so, I call this a fake holiday because it's misleading misleading women to believe that somehow they are the victims of some sort of sex-based, gender-based discrimination in pay, when in fact it has a lot more to do with the choices you make rather than some boss paying a guy more just because of what's between his legs or what's not between yours.
Well, and the interesting thing about that is that I have known professional women that have taken very unique paths to avoid both the pay gap issue and to have more flexibility for their own life. So, for example, my good friend Kelsey Bowler, her, of Independent Women's Forum, she's working for different organizations and kind of putting together a full-time, schedule, so forth. And when she started to want to have kids, she said, well, I still want to work, but I want to kind of control what I do. I want to have more say over what I do. So she started freelancing and in the gig economy, kind of started her own business doing her own thing. I think a lot of women that want to continue to work through the childbearing process have that option if they wish. And if they don't want to, many of them still make the choice to say, I'm going to take time out. I'm going to raise my kids for a few years. Then I'm going to get back into the workforce. You said control those variables. If you took that same woman and she never stepped away from the workforce, didn't have the kids, but just stayed at the job the way likely the male counterpart did in her same company, she might even be making more than him based on her level, skill level, et cetera, just from the seniority in place. The reality is when we make those choices, we put kids more important than family, than work at times and so forth. Those are all lifestyle things that do go into account in terms of what the workplace does.
Well, absolutely. When you look at childless men and women starting at the very beginning of their careers, you will see that actually because women are earning more degrees, more graduate degrees, even, college degrees, they're actually starting out ahead of men. So if they didn't take time out of the workforce, if they chose not to work work part-time rather than full-time, if they chose a different career track, even within their company organization, one where maybe it's more demanding on their time, more travel, you would see that, yes, a lot of women would out-earn men. But I bring those factors back in. Men work more hours each day, each week, more likely to work full-time than part-time. When you look at the occupations and the fields of study, women are attracted to the humanities and the social sciences. Even in the medical field, you'll see a study with doctors, medical school graduates. The women are moving towards family medicine because of the flexibility and the time. Men, they're going after orthopedic surgery, higher payday. So there's nothing wrong. And I think that's the problem here. Women are condemned if they choose a more flexible career path, taking time out of the workforce. It's as though they're doing something wrong against feminism. No, that's about making specific choices that you get to make. And we're blessed to be an economy generating the flexible opportunities where you can choose what works best for you in different seasons of your life. That is why I hate calling it the pay gap, because it's fake. It really comes down to the choices that we make. And as I wrote in Town Hall, if you want to close the pay gap, make different choices.
Well, and that's the common sense approach to how to go about it. Is there anything else? Well, it's interesting you brought up all that stuff about the career paths and the kind of the distinctions between the men and women, because I do think largely public education, and I would say that through public schools and into the high school and college environment, I think is geared and I don't think it's intentional. I just think the way we have it structured gives advantages to women in a big way. I just think that the way we set up learning styles and in most curriculums in the public schools, it's more geared toward the feminine mind than the masculine mind. And I would like to see at times more opportunities for boys who may think or process a little bit differently be given a better whack at the apple, so to speak, if they don't love to learn the way they're being taught. And with Dr. Gardner's work on the different learning languages, there's so much about who we are as individuals that end up determining our success. And I have 3 kids, so I know the difference. I know that my brainiac math science nerd firstborn is very different than my daughter, who's my baby, who is my musical theater performer. And I don't think that they need to be punished for the way they learn. I just think we need to help them do the best they can and then teach work ethic. Patrice, in our homes, we're not teaching kids to work hard like we used to.
Yeah, regardless of what degree or career path you take or degree you pursue, you have to work very hard at it. And then you brought up freelancing. I mean, I think the Gen Z, I'm losing track now, but they understand, these young folks, they understand the importance of having side hustles or having extra income. So let's say you're not going into the high-paying STEM career field. Well, that's not to say that in your humanities work as a teacher, as a social worker, that you can't also have private clients on the side and supplementing your income to, create that kind of lifestyle that maybe you want that your 9-to-5 job doesn't provide. But that's really about teaching somebody to work really hard and do the most that you can. I love when you talk about learning styles, because I have 3 boys. The third one is about to enter kindergarten this year. And they will learn with a little ball in their hand, squeezing something all the time. Sit them in a desk and just put them in front of a paper. And after 20 minutes is generous, 10 minutes, their mind is wandering. Yeah. So, we talked just a little bit about the education department going away. I'm actually hopeful that at the local level and the state level, there are a lot of programs that are really geared toward boys and teaching them how to learn in ways that benefit them. Maybe this is an opportunity to take all that federal money and really expand those programs, and states can learn from each other when it comes to really teaching boys and girls how to learn in a way that's going to be productive for them.
That would be so much preferable to 4,300 bureaucrats eating their vendor food out of the lunchbox at the Department of Education. Anyway, different topic for a different time. Patrice Onwuka, always appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back back to That Kevin Show from Times Square. You know we like to take a look at family-safe entertainment, and nothing has set the standard higher in recent years than The Chosen, the epic telling of the disciples of Jesus Christ. Just days ago, I sat down with Jonathan Roumie, who plays the esteemed Jesus character on this landmark television series in anticipation of the 5th season.
2 questions from me, one from my 12-year-old, who is my Jonathan.
Okay.
First question from me.
Shoot.
2 years ago on the teal carpet in Georgia, I asked you about the immensity of playing Jesus. And you were like, if I had thought about it going into it, I don't know if I would have gotten out of bed the day that they presented it to me. You're going into season 5, and the emotions are getting even more intense. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the intimacy between you and the character now?
Every season draws me closer. Every season challenges me in some way. Season 5 has been the most challenging season and work of my career, and I think I'm a better man for it. Hopefully a better man of faith. Hopefully a wider channel or vessel for the light of the gospel to shine through the vehicle of this show. But I know the crucifixion's coming up, and that's going to challenge me in a whole other dimension that I don't know if I'm ready for yet, but I know I'll be as ready as he allows me to be once we get there. So I still try to stay focused on the present. I still maintain that if I were to truly consider the magnitude of the impact and what it is that I'm attempting to do and what I've been doing for the last 5 seasons, I would crumple under the weight of it all.
So change, but no change from 2 years ago.
Pretty much.
Yeah, good. Actors tell me that there's what they call a residue from the character that they play that lingers with them.
Sure.
You've been in this character for a while now. Do you feel that residue in your personal life, in your own experience with God? What is the lingering effect away from the set of playing Jesus in Jonathan's life?
I mean, I talk to him every day, like out loud. Like I feel like he's my buddy, and I'm constantly bouncing stuff off of him and trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with certain things and certain relationships with certain people and certain situations. And I spend more time in church than I've ever spent in my entire life, and I'm grateful for it. I'll continue that.
The talking out loud part's explainable because you're from New York.
Yeah.
Everybody does that. But most of them not talking to God.
Yeah. These days they don't involve 4-letter swear words, thankfully. So.
Yeah. When I told my Jonathan, my middle, and he's my little Spielberg, he wants to. He's already composed a comic book called Hank and Clam. It's an octopus and clam, and they have adventures. It's really weird.
Amazing.
But he's a big fan. I told you about him 2 years ago. He was 2 years younger at the time, but he's a big fan of the show. And when I said I'm going to go back and Mr. Roumie's going to be there, he goes, "Oh, Dad, can you ask him a question for me?" So on the show, at this point, I'll play the clip.
Dear Mr. Roumie, what movie or television show that you did not act in is your all-time favorite?
Oh, first thing that comes to mind is The Mandalorian. I love that series. It's so well done. It's such an homage to the original trilogy and the spirit of early days of Lucasfilm.
Are you a Jedi?
I am. Come, little one. So I think if I were to do the next project after The Chosen, and somebody said, "We're going to make you a Jedi," I said, "It's great. I already got the robe, so it's fine. The sandals." I'm like, I'm halfway there. I'm like 2/3 of the way to the character already. So
to my Jonathan and those of you watching, I did not know this. The Mandalorian is my Jonathan's #1 favorite show of all time. I am not.
Whoa.
So, 2 very cool coincidences there. Thank you, Mr.
Kiddo. Yeah. Good job, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Jonathan Roumie, of course, playing the character of Jesus in the epic The Chosen series, which opens this weekend, coast to coast, telling the 5th season, the Last Supper, the overturning of the tables in the temple, and ultimately some of the most intense moments of Jesus' final days. Kevin McCullough, That Kevin Show continues. Stay with us.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's Kevin McCullough, That Kevin Show. Glad to have you with us. And always interested in knowing what's going on, kind of reverberating around when we're not in the heavy election cycles of a presidential cycle. There's always reform that's taking place. There's different groups saying we didn't do as well as we did last time. We'd like to do better, etc. One area where that's happening on the conservative side of things is with young women kind of responding to something called the manosphere. That sounds kind of odd. Let's find out more from the reporter for Campus Reform, Emily Sturge, who joins us now. Emily, it's great to have you. Welcome to That Kevin Show.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to get into this topic.
What is the manosphere?
Men have spaces online where figures like Joe Rogan are holding conversations based on values of masculinity, free and open debate, and young men are absolutely loving it. We saw Donald Trump go on Joe Rogan's podcast and performed extremely well with young men. And now, as a result, young women are also creating spaces online where they can create communities of like-minded individuals, where young conservative women are sharing their values of patriotism, of faith, of family, and of course of conservatism as a result of the media landscape of the manosphere.
Why does it have to be conservatives? Is it because liberals already have so many groups that they get to hang out with and talk freely with?
This is all about the rejection of the left's radical ideology and feminist ideology that is pushed on young women in all of the places where we are at. That's the education system, the mainstream media, celebrities, Hollywood, social media is all pushing this leftist agenda on us, the radical feminist agenda on us. And young women are turning back. We're saying that we care about the American dream. We care about becoming wives and mothers. And the left is instead telling us to embrace our career and abortion instead of becoming a wife and a mother. So we are turning to social media influencers, people like Riley Gaines or Brett Cooper, who are both young women who talk about conservative values, talk about lifestyle topics in a way that aligns with our values.
There's a lot of women that have been doing this, and I did kind of play dumb a little bit. I know what the manosphere is, and I know why it came about, because from about the late 1970s through the 2000s, we've had the predominant viewpoint in academia, culture, even government and public life has all been radical feminism. Not the feminists of the 1920s, the feminists of the 60s and 70s. The 1920s said women are equal in God's eyes. They should be equal in the law's eyes. They should be able to own property, vote, do everything that the men can do, get paid the same amount of money for the same amount of work, etc. In the 60s and 70s, it wasn't about any of that. It wasn't about equality. It wasn't about anything that looked like equity. It was about replacement. And we wanted to replace men and say that they were essentially unnecessary to the functioning of society. Men, for some reason, started taking offense to that. And over time, the manosphere is what came about after it got really, really bad in the 2000s. But it is interesting, Emily, to think that the men who had to go online to find male safe spaces kind of stand with women when it comes to keeping otherwise male people out of female spaces. I mean, there is an irony to the fact that women are seeking out safe spaces online, just to think, especially since there are men in their locker rooms, on their sports teams, and in their fields of play that they never asked for.
You're absolutely right. That leftist ideology, that leftist narrative, of course, dominates our university spaces and even our women's spaces like our sororities. And that's why we are turning to online communities to talk about our conservative values, because we're just not getting it in person on our college campuses. And you're right, the left is trying to erase womanhood. I mean, even definitions of words, they can't tell you what a woman is. You can't say mother anymore. Leftist politicians are saying that you have to say inseminated person. I mean, it sounds disgusting, but the left is erasing the very definitions of what it means to be a woman, in addition to erasing women's safe spaces. And at the Leadership Institute's campus reform, we've reported about the erasure of women's bathrooms, turning them into gender neutral bathrooms, locker rooms, safe spaces, of course, women's sports teams, handing women's trophies and scholarships to biological males. And then in addition to that, the left has supported illegal immigrants infiltrating our communities, of course, jeopardizing the safety of young women. And what it's done is create a generation of women who are fearful of becoming the next Laken Riley. So the left has been on this endless pursuit to erase womanhood, and women are standing up. We are speaking out, and we're speaking out on social media.
I don't think it's any surprise that in light of what you're saying, and I'll back up a second. It is a surprise to me that in light of the thrashing that the Democrats just got in the election of 24, with this being an issue that certainly motivated female votes. I mean, Donald Trump talked about it. Some of the influencers you're mentioning, Riley, she was on this show. She talks about it. And they had large followings, and they got lots of people saying, I really agree with this. You even had people of the LGBTQ arena aligning with pro-family people, saying that the trans agenda in schools is not good for anybody. And despite all of those voices saying, no, this isn't where we should be going, since the election, after Donald Trump's been inaugurated, in March of the next year, you still have those people holding on to those same ideas. I see it on my Twitter feed all the time. I see Jessica Tarlov on Fox. I see Katie Fang on MSNBC. These people are still advocating for boys and girls bathrooms. And the whole universe has said we don't want it.
It shows how out of touch the left is with the reality of the American people. This is an issue. I don't even know if it would be 80-20. I think at this point, nearly 100% of this country, other than those choice people in the media and maybe some people in Hollywood who are advocating for transgender athletes to take the sports and to infiltrate the sports teams, take the scholarships, take the trophies of young women. It feels like the common everyday American, yeah, they can agree that this is an issue of safety. This is an issue of fairness. And it's just the fringe minority on the left who are really advocating for that transgender issue. Crazy that this country has gotten to this point where common sense needs to be declared in an executive order.
Yeah. Emily Sturge, thank you for reporting on this, and keep up the good work, and come back and see us again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Kevin McCullough coming right back from Times Square. It's That Kevin Show.